Good evening, everybody. We're going to call the August 18th, 2025 meeting of the Brandywine School District Board of Education to order. It's 7:03 p.m. We're in the multipurpose room at Mount Pleasant Elementary School. Can I ask Mr. Ackerman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. John and Ralph, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And that moves us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Lawson.
Good evening, Board President Heller, members of the board, members of our audience and community. We continue our focus on student outcomes data as the primary driver of this superintendent's report. Tonight's data dive relates to our state-mandated Smarter Balance test scores, just released last week by the Delaware Department of Education. Before we examine our district's data, I'd like to remind everyone that Smarter is a summative assessment or a test, a snapshot of a single point in time to assess proficiency or mastery of every Common Core standard in both ELA and math. That proficiency is further measured by a single cut score, not a continuum or a range of scores. Smarter scores do not define our children, their full potential, nor do they capture the breadth of skills, readiness, and growth our students demonstrate as they pave their path to a career or college and life success. It is inaccurate and inappropriate to correlate Smarter proficiency with other metrics like graduation rates, college and career readiness rates, or any other standardized measure that has its own purpose. All the data metrics combined, presented through the calendar year to this board, provide a collective picture of Brandywine student outcomes, performance, and progress. This first slide shows Smarter ELA proficiency over time. Proficiency on Smarter Balance is the percentage of students who earn an achievement level 3 or 4 on the test. Achievement levels 3 or 4 means that you have shown mastery of every single standard in that grade level and some or many above the grade level. Brandywine's overall ELA proficiency in grades 3 through 8 climbed 2 points in school year 25, resulting in a 4-point lead over the state proficiency rates. While we are not satisfied with these scores and realize that we've not yet returned to pre-pandemic proficiency levels, we are pleased that we are on the rise and making progress towards it. Here is our math proficiency over time for students who earned an achievement level 3 or 4 in mathematics on the test. Again, we see a steady increase over the last 3 years, but not yet returning to the proficiency levels we were seeing prior to COVID. Brandywine's math proficiency is higher than the state average as well. Here is a different way to look at Smarter ELA achievement levels to better understand where our students are related to their mastery or proficiency of grade level standards. When you look more closely at Smarter scores, we see the same 45% of Brandywine students who met or exceeded grade level standards in ELA with the score of 3 or 4, but an additional 22% of our students nearly met proficiency or grade level standards by attaining achievement level 2. Students who score an achievement level 2 could have mastered all but one of the ELA standards at grade level and missed the single cut score to an achievement level 3 by 1 point, yet they remain at an achievement level 2. Here is the same information shown in mathematics. 37% of Brandywine students met or exceeded grade level standards with the 3 or a 4, but an additional 25% of students nearly met proficiency. While ELA is more consistent across grades with roughly 33% of students not meeting or approaching grade level expectations, in math we see that those gaps to grade level increase over time. So why show you the data this way? because there is a false narrative out there that because proficiency rates are lower than expected, our students are unable to read, write, or compute math at the most basic levels. That cannot be further from the truth. Our students are learning at high levels using rigorous standards and expectations, and there is a continuum of learning and student performance that must be shown to better explain the data that you're seeing. Another way of viewing the data is to look at our relative performance in Delaware. So here we provide a comparison of Brandywine School District to the other 16 Delaware public school districts. Remember that VOTEC school districts, one for each county, do not administer Smarter Balance, so they are not included in this comparison. Thus, 16 is the comparison, not 19. Because Brandywine's growth in proficiency has outrun the state average, our district ranking has improved in ELA from 8th in the first year of Smarter Balance to now 4th in the state in school year 25. In math, we started as the 7th ranked district in the first year of Smarter Balance testing in 2015, fell to as low as 10th, and have now risen back to the 5th ranked district in the state. Just because we are 4th and 5th in the state does not mean we are complacent or satisfied with this data. We will continue to work hard to grow every child to proficiency and their full potential with the support of our families and the community. Last week, we had the pleasure of welcoming an inspiring group of educators during our new teacher orientation event. From those who have chosen Brandywine to begin their teaching careers to experienced educators eager to start a new chapter, we are honored you've joined our BSD family. We'd like to take a moment to extend our sincere thanks to our facilities and custodial staff for their outstanding work in preparing our school buildings for the start of the new year. Their dedication, attention to detail, and hard work over the summer ensure that our students and staff return to clean, safe, and welcoming learning environments. We truly appreciate their commitment to our schools and community. As we kick off the 25-26 school year, I invite students, families, and staff to celebrate with BSD by submitting their first day of school photos. BSD First Days of School signs, available for every school and grade, plus employee year versions, can be downloaded and printed at our website, www.brandywineschools.org/back-to-school. We look forward to sharing your first day smiles across our BSD channels. And finally, our August Sizzle video.
Good looking, yes. Good job, touch.
You got it. Keep on, girl. Yeah, girl. Super 917 WMPH, that was The Pretenders, don't get me wrong.
Well, every summer, the site interns come from the site program and kind of take over the radio station. They're learning how to DJ, voice track. They made a great crop of PSAs, public service announcements, all kinds of tasks related to, broadcast communication, not only for their own growth, but for, the consumption of the community. It goes on the radio station owned by the BSD, WMPH.
President Heller, that concludes this month's report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Lawson? That video reminded me that today was the first day back for many of our educators and staff, so a huge welcome back to them. And that moves us on to public comment. Just as a reminder, the public comment portion of the meeting allows members of the public to address the board on any agenda items or educational topics, and board policy limits the allocated time per speaker to 2 minutes. We're going to go in the room first. Maria Blasucki, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I should know how to pronounce it. Blasucci.
It's nice to be back. I retired 3 years ago from Brandywine School District, and I'm here tonight actually on the behalf of my elderly neighbors who don't have access or don't check social media. And of course, the concern is the increase in tax revenue on their school board portion of their tax bills. Many of the elderly residents pay their taxes in one lump sum. It's not included in their mortgage. Some of them are looking at increases of $1,600 to $2,000, and they just don't have the money for it. I know the legislature went to bat for us last week and gave the school boards a timeline to see if they were going to split the tax as well. So myself and B are here tonight just to find out what's going on at the school board level to give them any relief if possible.
Thank you. And that is on the agenda in item 9, so we'll be discussing that tonight. And then there's one other in the room. Thank you. John Pope.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'd like to just kind of tag team with that about honestly shock and dismay at the amount of the tax increase. My tax in the last 2 years, the school tax increased over 62%. I have a mid-priced home, and as far as the last meeting went, sorry, not the last meeting, the referendum, where I understand that it was a 45 cents on $100 or something along those lines, $4.50 increase. I feel like that was somewhat slipped under the radar for most of the citizens. I understand that the board complied with the code, that you would have published in the newspaper 4 times, post on the doors of the schools, and be on the website. However, for an increase of this amount, especially in conjunction with the vice chancellor's ruling that we had to all have our property reassessed, many of us in the community are hit with a huge tax increase. And I would put to you as members of the board that your duty not lies only to children. And I understand that your first priority is making sure the schools have what you perceive they need, that we all have increasing costs. I would be very interested to find out what measures were taken to decrease costs before this very extreme increase. I think that's about it, but I wanted to start here, but I'm going to be following this in other ways. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. And I believe we have one comment online. Is that correct? Ying Zhang.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello? Can you hear me? I assume you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to let me talk about this topic. Again, same with the first 2 other persons. It's about the school tax. I remember I went to one of the meetings for the referendum. I remember there was a slide showing, illustrating how much increase, and it's going to be 2-step increase, first year and second year. So my understanding is that the second year is actually slightly less than the first year. So when I look at my bills, like first year, the increase for the school tax is $235. Now I got the second year increase. You know how much it is? It's over $800. So that's really a big surprise to me. And when I review the promotion material, the referendum promotion material, I just felt that, to be honest, this number just make me feel I was if not lied to, I was misled on this matter. Like the other two people, we understand school needs more money, but we all have higher bills to pay. Especially, I'm thinking about retirement in a few years. So I don't know what to do about it. Just to voice my concern. I really hope school can consider if they're gonna reimburse us for the actual increase, kind of go back to what the referendum talks about it. I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's all from me.
Great, thank you. And yeah, like I mentioned, I hope everybody can hang around until item 9, which is where we're going to discuss that. I do want to share one comment, I guess, since all three of the comments were about the tax increase. And just a reminder for those like myself that saw a pretty large increase, the largest part of that increase was simply a result of the reassessment process causing a realignment of tax liability based on the new assessed values. So as a district, we are receiving the same amount of revenue this year that we would have received this year had it not been for the reassessment process. So we're going to be discussing some options later under Section 9 here. But that said, as you'll hear, there's no magic pill, right, that fixes this short of there being an audit of the new assessed values and their accuracy, I guess. But I've been giving out my personal example because I know there's a lot of questions about what the referendum impact was on the increases that we saw. So my home increased 574%. So my tax increase was a little over $1,500 this year. Out of that $1,500, $214.77 was attributed to the referendum, which is about $10 more than would have been under my old assessed value. So a very, very small part of the increase that people are seeing are attributed to year 2 of the referendum. The majority of it is directly attributed to the realignment of values based on that new assessed value. So if anybody, feel free to email me after the meeting, and I'd be happy to provide lots of examples that show how that's the case. That's what I've been trying to do for the past couple weeks, so I'd be happy to do that. And that moves us on to board business. Mr. Ackerman, DSBA Executive Committee.
Yes, and in answer to some board questions, there is attached the 2024 DSB annual report as well as a discussion of DSBA benefits. Excuse me. We had the DSBA annual meeting on August 9th. Mr. Lavoie and I were able to attend. We did honor board members for their service. If you had 5 years or 10 years, 5 years or more, you received a plaque from DSBA. Less than 5 years, you got a certificate of achievement. It was a very nice affair. I wish we had better traffic. Getting to Milford on a Saturday morning is not the easiest thing to do, but it was a very nice affair. The first meeting will be September 4th, I believe. No, I'm sorry, September 3rd. Our meeting is September 4th.
All right, next up, Mr. Lavoie, DSBA Legislative Committee.
The DSBA Legislative Committee won't meet for the first time until October.
All right, next up, we're going to table the Advisory and Assessment Committee on Equity. They have not met, and per board policy, the board would have to provide them with a new charge moving forward because the timeline for their previous charge expired, and we're going to be discussing that at our September workshop. That moves us on to District Finance Committee. Mr. Skrobot.
District Finance Committee held its meeting last Wednesday, August 13th. I did not attend. I was out of town. Mr. McCoy will review what was discussed regarding the monthly financial report, the August 1st financial position. I understand there was some robust conversation regarding the reassessments and Mr. McCoy's presentation later this evening for the tax warrant update. The next meeting for the Finance Committee will be Wednesday, September 10th at 5 p.m. with here at the board conference room, and a Zoom link I'm sure will be posted on the district webpage.
Great. Health and Wellness is me. Our first meeting for the year will be November 20th. Maintenance Advisory Committee, Mr. Najemi.
Yes, there was a meeting on July 15th at Darley Road. There was a review of the Certificate of Necessity, the submission that will be discussed later tonight under Section 8. The committee toured the entire school and reviewed upcoming minor cap projects for the site, and the next meeting will be on August 22nd at Concord High School.
Parent counsel for students with disabilities is Mr. Jordan, who is absent tonight. I did speak to him today, though, and he let me know that the first meeting of the year will be September 8th for that committee. Parent and Citizens Advisory, Ms. Stock?
We have not met. We will have our first meeting in October.
Perfect. Wilmington Learning Collaborative, Mr. Najemi?
We had a meeting on August 6th where we reviewed the summer learning events that occurred that were supported by the WLC. End-of-year school data as well was submitted and presented by the WLC. And we also discussed the priorities for the WLC going forward with the next year. I will also state that the executive for the WLC, Dr. Burgos, put out a warning or perhaps a discussion that the WLC, due to state funding issues, was in a somewhat precarious position. And I mentioned that not so much for specifics with regards to the WLC, but just to provide a context in the sense of there are a lot of funding issues, a lot of questions, federal, state, that are going on that are affecting WLC, but have the ability to affect a whole host of districts as well.
Thank you. 97.1 WMPH Advisory, Mr. Lavoie?
I'm going to take that for Mr. Lavoie, and just a little typo there, 91.7 Super WMPH. We had our meeting July 14th. Mr. Wishengrad updated us regarding the interns from the BSD site program, had been visiting WMPH on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, just one of the many job sites for the site interns to get hands-on work experience. They were involved with DJing, voice tracking, recording public service announcements, promos, and family interviews. Also, in the wake of the Department of Education's pathway approval earlier this year, Mr. Wishengrad continues to meet with Wilmington University to align our two broadcast journalism programs for this upcoming school year. You'll be able to see BSD promoting, especially through our high school open houses, the broadcast journalism pathway, alongside all of the other CTE pathways throughout the district. We should have this fully completed by June of '26 at the end of that school year. Also, WMPH broadcasted throughout the period. For the most part, 24/7. There was a brief outage on June 19th related to thunderstorm power outage and flooding in the local area, so we did have a little downtime. And last but not least, Mr. Wishengrad continues to work on a longstanding project for compiling an overall operations manual for the radio station and everything that goes along with that. Our next meeting, we don't have an exact date, but will tentatively be in the month of November. So until then, tune in to Super 91.7 WMPH.
And for additional board members' report, I have one to start. I attended the Athletic Facilities Work Group meeting on August 13th at Springer. The meeting started with a history of the work group that was formed coming out of the last referendum, and this group was formed specifically to gather feedback and give input on needs as they relate to athletics in the district. We reviewed all of the proposed certificate of necessities that you're going to hear about shortly from Mr. Reed, so I won't duplicate that effort. And then we learned of just some other sports-specific updates throughout the district. For example, the high school athletic trainers are now employed directly by the district at quite a cost savings over contracting that with a third party like we have in the past. We've also added assistant athletic directors to the high schools to help with the increasing interest and workload that they have coordinating all of the sports teams. The committee, mostly Dr. Rivera and the facilities committee, are working on auditing and updating the facilities use policies, guidelines, and fees to make sure that we are recovering all costs that are going out because of outside users' use of our property. Does anyone else have additional board reports?
Yes, Mr. President. I just would like to just report back that I did meet with John Reed and Representative Larry Lambert, and also this young man over here whose name I don't recall. There's a piece of land that used to be a softball field near Claymont Elementary that they would like to turn into a garden. I think it's a great idea. I think Mr. Reed will probably be bringing back in September timeframe a lease that we can collaborate to help create this garden. At the moment, the land is basically landlocked. It sits sort of behind the old facilities building and on sort of the right of the old football field. But it's a nice piece of property. I think it's a great use, and Representative Lambert is there to help with funding. There's a grant that I believe has been gotten to help with that. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention as something that will be coming up.
Thank you. Any other board member reports? All right, that moves on to item 5, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Ackerman? Second. Second, Ms. Stock. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 6, personnel matters. Is there a motion to accept the personnel matters as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Najemi, Mr. Lavoy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is student matters. A motion to accept the student matters is discussed in executive session.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Stock and Mr. Scorbut, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, old business. Mr. Ackerman, the Policy Review Committee.
Yeah, I appreciate some of the feedback I got from folks at the workshop that I was unable to attend. I do apologize for being ill that day. But someone made a very good point, which is we have policy 1.03, which talks about how to do policy and form policies. So I'd like to withdraw the actual policy that I suggested, and I would like to just add just some wording to B5. So instead of reading review and reporting all policies, including this policy, shall be reviewed by the superintendent or designee and reported as directed by the Brandywine Board of Education. The superintendent shall annually report any regarding new policies or revisions, existing policies the superintendent deems warranted. I think if we just amend that slightly to all Brandywine Board policies, including this policy, shall be reviewed by the Policy Review Committee established by the board in conjunction with the superintendent. The board president will appoint members and any other stakeholders to participate in the review. Each policy shall be reviewed annually, and revisions will be referred to the board for review, discussion, and adoption. I sent a copy of that wording, old and new, to everybody in your BSD email right now, so you have it. So if we look at that, maybe I think it was the first time you're seeing this particular wording, so maybe we can bring it back next month as an update to 1.03 versus a whole new policy.
Good. Any questions? All right, we'll bring that back as a final read for next month. Mr. Reed, 8B, certificates of necessity.
Hopefully this is, there we go. I'm going to go through the certificate of necessity. This is the third time that we're presenting this. We have already been given a heads up by the Department of Education that they're recommending to districts you can either submit or not submit, but they're most likely not going to have any funds to fund anything this year. But they also told us a certificate of necessity is a way for them to determine what the needs are throughout the state. So that's why at the end of this, there's another project added for future consideration. So most likely I'll be before the board next year this time. But we'll go through the presentation as to what we are going to be asking the state for. Next slide, please. Battery here. The process here is that you submit to the state by the end of August, and that requires board approval. The Department of Education has till the end of October to review it and get back to the district. From there, we have a year and a half to take it to voters. But as I said, it is most likely we are going to hear that what we are asking for is not going to be supported because of other ongoing projects in the state. Next slide. We are in phase 5. We've been renovating our buildings since 1994 with a debt expense that's gone up and down, like when you pay off a car loan, that frees up money to get another car loan. But you have to keep up on a cycle for these schools because the maintenance dollars do not keep up with the building needs. And there's a threshold. Once a project gets above $1 million, you have to go to major cap improvement. So the projects are Mount Pleasant Elementary, full renovation of Mount Pleasant High, site program, that is a new facility, inclusive playgrounds would hit all our elementary school, athletic fields, updates for our secondary schools, and a request to get in line for our Concord High School. Next slide. Mount Pleasant Elementary would be a full renovation. The roof on the building is now 93 years old. I change that slide every year to add one more year. The main point when you come up to Mount Pleasant Elementary, it was a school when people used to walk to school. And now with the parking lot in the back, it's disjointed from the public. Like you guys entering in tonight from the public, this building's very hard to figure out where to get into it. And the students here have to use breadcrumbs to get around. The idea here is that we'd move the main entry point to the back of the building. The cafeteria right now is in the gym. That's the way they did it when they reopened the school. This building was closed for a matter of time, and when they put the cafeteria in, it's in the gym. The cafeteria looks more like a place to store a plane than it is for elementary school kids to have lunch. And the kindergarten classrooms in this building are roughly 650 square feet. The DOE standard is 1,200 square feet. So most of the walls in this building are non-load bearing, like other schools that we've renovated. We've made the classrooms fit today's education. The kindergarten wing of this building was added in 1936. Kindergarten was a lot different than in 1936. This used to be 3 separate buildings. They were all joined together in 1971. Next slide. I don't know if I mentioned, but the roof is from 1932. The slate portion of the roof is original, and this building has well over 11 additions. So every time we work on this building, we have to do a lot of history and a lot of research, but it just kept on growing and growing and growing. So this building has been a K through 12, it's been a middle school, it's been a high school, and now it's an elementary school. So this building has pretty much been everything. Next slide. Mount Pleasant High School is 1958. We're talking about a full renovation. There's a lot of utility work required. The music department is in the lower level. The music programs at Mount Pleasant High School are thriving. The kids don't fit in the programs. They're having to use the auditorium and other spaces as classroom. If you go to Mount Pleasant High, the choir's practicing in the hallway. They sound great, but the music rooms at Claymont Elementary are larger than the music rooms at Mount Pleasant High School. There's some ADA code compliance issues. There's currently 10 classrooms in the school where a child in a wheelchair can't access because of where they're located in the building. And also we want to simplify the floor plan on the lower level. The lower level used to be the district office for Mount Pleasant School District, which was built years and years ago. And to get down there, the areas really don't connect. So we're going to simplify the floor plan. Next slide, please. This slide shows the original building, first floor in blue, and it shows in green where we would add some space. This is to get the students and the programs out of the lower level. The lower level is built on a spring, not the best place to do it. The green area in the back of the building was supposed to be the swimming pool that they never built. So that gives us real estate to add in addition to the building. We can build out while the students are there, not bother a soul, build additional classrooms we can use for swing space, and then eventually make them into band, chorus, and the other music programs that they offer. Next slide, please. The systems in the building are just simply at the end of their life. Some of the systems are from the 90s, but many of the systems are from the 50s. And that room there with a pump in it, there are 12 rooms like that in the building that are continuously pumping the spring water out of the building. Now, I wish we could bottle it and sell it, but no, there's always a little bit of water running in the basement. So we have alarms on that. It is on a generator, but this is just one of the things you have to do when you keep up with Mount Pleasant High School. Next slide, please. The problems at Mount Pleasant High are big ones. They built the building deeper than the sewer line. So in the basement, that set of stairs that goes up and over, that's the sewer line. So on the whole lower level, there are no bathrooms. So it's our intention to take it outside, direct everything outside, but these are not simple problems. Now, the one thing about Mount Pleasant High is people would ask, well, then why would you do this? By today's standards, Mount Pleasant High would be built at half the square footage. Mount Pleasant High is a very well-built building. The number to renovate Mount Pleasant High is less than half the cost of building a new one. Mount Pleasant High is 270,000 square foot. If we were to build a new building, the state would only allow us roughly 120,000 square foot, or somewhere in that range. Actually, it's 177, plus we'd have to add some space. So we would lose roughly 100,000 square foot if we were to build new. Next slide, please. Inclusive playgrounds. This is a photo from Forward Elementary. There was nothing better. We got some grant money, built a playground there that everybody could use. Playground manufacturers don't build the best of equipment for a child who's in a wheelchair or disabled. Kids just want to play with kids. Also, our playgrounds are aging. So this would build inclusive playgrounds. We have 9 elementary schools. This would build inclusive playgrounds at 8 of them because the playground cost is built into Mount Pleasant Elementary's playground. This would put in play surfaces other than mulch, which is ADA compliant by code, but tell a parent that who has a child in a wheelchair, who their child cannot play with their friends. So this is to take care of this at all our elementary schools. And let's be honest, our playgrounds are verging on the age of 20, 25 years. The useful life of a playground is 20, 25 years. And if we're able to get grant money for any of our other schools and take care of this beforehand, of course, we wouldn't need the funds to do any schools if we're able to do that. But this goes back to separate is not equal. Next slide. The SITE program. This is Skills for Independent Transition to Employment. This is our 19 to 22-year-old program. We are leasing space right now in the Claymont Community Center. We have property on 202. This photograph is what Cape Penelope has. It looks like 4 retail stores outside, but when you get inside, it's 1 classroom for the students with a commercial kitchen so they can get their Serve Safe certificates to get jobs out there working in kitchens. We have property on 202, some great property on 202. This would be a billboard for a district, and more importantly, a billboard for these students. People from the public would get to meet these students, and that'll assist them in their desire to get a job. Right now, being buried in the Claymont Community Center is no way to meet these students. And quite honestly, when you're renting space, we can't send our people in to change a space. We can't add electrical outlets. We can't do a lot of the things that we need to do for an ever-changing program. So this is an example of what Cape Penelope has. We're looking to build something similar, would not be that large a structure, but on the 202 piece of property, you can see our Brandywine Operations Center. The idea would be to build next to that. Mission Barbecue's there, that parking lot next to Mission Barbecue, that's BSD property. So that puts us right in a retail center, and we would put our technology and school nutrition department on the 2nd floor, and they could work with these students. Next slide, please. Athletic fields. We have seen, our students are seeing, what's happening down south and all the athletic facilities. You go to any of the schools down south and they have proper places to sell concessions and proper places for bathrooms and locker rooms. At our high schools, we have porta pots. The tracks, which were paid for by a referendum from 2000, were supposed to have a 10-year life. We've gotten 25 years out of them, but they need to be replaced at a tune of $450,000 per track. We have 6 of them in totals. Our high school softball and baseball fields do not have dugouts. We're starting to get a few in, but we really don't have them. And this shows 2 turf fields per high school. Also some ADA access to our fields, and this also includes some work at the middle schools, primarily the track reconstruction. Next slide. The certificate of necessity. Mount Pleasant Elementary is $76 million. Mount Pleasant High School is now listed at $92 million. Inclusive Playgrounds is a little over $5 million. The site program is $11.7, and athletics fields is listed at $41.8. You can see on the breakdown there, the local side is 40%, the state side is 60%. That would be our ask if approved. Next slide, please. Same information, I guess I just made it prettier. Next slide. Concord High School. Concord High School was, the start of the construction was 1968, but it was not finished till 72. It sat unfinished for a year and a half during a strike. It was last renovated in 2003. The board was presented in 2000 a report from a structural engineer recommending in 2000 that Concord be rebuilt due to masonry issues. The board chose at that time to renovate the building. Money was put in the budget when we renovated it. That money fell short to the tune of $3 million. So we had to spend $3 million more in 2003 by transferring money from other projects. I want to be clear on this. Concord is safe. Concord's a good school. But there gets to be a point when that renovation cycle comes back again, you have to decide, do you build new or do you replace? This decision is a decision that needs to be made in the next 10 years. Rebuilding Concord is for the kids who are in kindergarten now. It's not for today, but we have to get in line because there are other districts putting in for new schools. Concord High School's brick and the exterior of the building is something that we inspect annually, keep up with. I have engineers coming on Wednesday. This was our inspection of last summer, but it's something we have to keep up with. It's something where a third of the brick has already been removed from the building. So when you drive by the building, you see the stucco on the second floor. That used to be brick. That was removed. The top 10 feet of the building all the way around was removed. The precast shifted a little bit during the last earthquake, believe it or not. That's all tied in together. We've refastened it to the building, but it's something we need to keep an eye on. So the recommendation for a new school for Concord to fill the formula. Concord is 210,000 square feet. By DOE formula, we are eligible for the number of students we have for 177,000 square feet. DOE does not have in their formula spaces for vocational ed and other programs which we offer. So they provide you square footage of classrooms at 900 square foot. In the formula, we would be asking for additional square foot for career and technical education classes and a little bit of extra athletic space. Also, the pool would be a separate ask. So what I've done here with the architects who have done a wonderful job on this, a new Concord in today's numbers is roughly $135 million. This is to get in line. Now, over the next year, we will continue to develop this. If I have to come back to the board next year, which I fully intend I will have to, this number may seem a little different. We're going to dive into this to see if some of the career and technical parts of this ask can be included in the state portion. But Concord's is one of those buildings that, like Lancashire, we replaced. It was the right decision. Like Hanby, we replaced. And Concord's getting to the point that in the cycle, it was renovated in 2003. Here we are, 22 years out. By the time we get to this, we'll be close to possibly 30 years out. And it's just a good business decision to build a new school. Now, in the report, we have to show something. When you submit the CNs, this is not the time you pick the color of the drapes. But if we were to get the athletic fields, we would certainly not build the athletic fields where we would build a new Concord. We would think of all that. But over the next years, we will develop this a little further, figure out where we would build the school on site. It would most likely be a 3-story school to keep the footprint small. But we've looked at the site. There are at least 3 locations where we could do it. We could educate the kids in the current building, build a new one, move them next door, take it down. just like we did at Lancashire. So this is the full certificate of necessity. I'm looking for board approval so I can take this to the Department of Education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And then just so I can confirm it for the benefit of those listening, so this is a many-step process, correct? So the very first step is submitting these to the state, which is going to take years. And then if they hypothetically approve a project, it would come back to the board and you would present, so for this approved project, with this much money, we can do X, with this much money, we can do Y. And then the board would choose an option, and then the voters would have to approve
Absolutely.
the project
And,
as the
and
third step.
the board can choose a lesser scope, a lesser number. We can never go higher, but as I said, if we're able to find grant money for one of these playgrounds in the next year or so, that comes off. If there are things we're able to figure out on the athletic field with either donations or other grants we could get for, let's say, dugouts or anything, those projects can come off. So absolutely, but this is the first step. And the Concord is basically asking to get in line. This is going to go on for a long, long time.
Any other questions?
Mr. Reed, are you aware of any other schools in the state that have a roof older than Mount Pleasant Elementary?
No, I'm not. There are a couple schools that are older, but they don't have the slate roofs. Slate will last 100 years, but the nails did not. And thank goodness to Mick, she's not here tonight, but she used her drone, and we did a roof inspection, and we found some parts of the roof, which we can fix, but we're going to have to get up here with a high reach, why kids are here, 60-foot high reach to go up there and safely hit those areas. But yeah, it's an old roof, it's time.
Any other questions? Does anyone have a motion to submit the certificates of necessity to the state?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Ackerman and Mr. Scorbut. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carried. That moves us to actually Dr. Hess, I believe we're taking next. You get a couple-minute reprieve, Mr. McCoy. So Dr. Hess, which is the new 9A on special education service providers.
Good evening, President Heller, Vice President Scarbutt, Superintendent Lawson, and members of the board. I am here this evening to seek your approval for a multi-vendor award in response to our 2025 request for proposal for the special education service providers. This recommendation follows the work of our RFP Evaluation Committee, which reviewed this and scored the proposals in accordance with the published criteria, which looked at the experience of the vendor, the staffing plan and job descriptions, the service delivery model, and their price. The district continues to face persistent shortage of certified special education teachers, related service providers, behavioral and mental health professionals, and particularly programs that are serving our significant and complex needs learners. The goal of this RFP is to ensure that we can secure qualified personnel in the following areas: instructional and program staff, behavioral and mental health services, therapy and related services, paraprofessional and nursing support. The approved vendors will be used to fill the vacancies when the district recruitment efforts are unsuccessful, provide related services that are required by a student's IEP and 504 plan, fully staff self-contained programs for our students with emotional disturbance and autism spectrum disorder, and ensure a continuity of services across our 16 schools and our specialized programs. The Evaluation Committee recommends awarding contracts to 29 vendors to provide comprehensive coverage across all of our service program categories. This ensures flexibility to mitigate the risk of staffing shortages. This multi-award approach aligns with the Delaware Code Title 29, 6926, and past district practice. These contracts will be effective from August 25th through July 31st, 2026, with the option to renew 2 additional one-year periods. Approval of the recommended vendor list as eligible providers for the forthcoming contracts under this RFP allows the district to engage them as needed to meet student need and maintain compliance with federal and state mandates. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Sure. So I have two questions for us. So from the weighted list, so it appears that there was 29 vendors that met the bid qualifications and 9 who did not. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then I guess as another way to phrase this, so you're asking, we're essentially approving not a dollar amount, but simply to add these vendors to an approved vendor list, for lack of a better?
That is absolutely correct.
Sorry? Okay. Any other question?
Are all of these vendors new to this process, or have they had
No.
experience with us personally?
16 of these are returning vendors. So we increased by 13.
And I guess, are these vendors managed at the building level when they are kind of slotted in to fill a role, or?
So we partner with the building leadership teams to evaluate candidates and determine assignments.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the multi-vendor award to the 29 vendors?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Mr. Scorbut, second?
Second.
Mr. Njemi, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that moves us to Mr. McCoy for the rest of the evening, starting with 9B, the monthly financial report for July.
Good evening, Board President Heller, Superintendent Lawson, board members, and audience members. We're going to start with the monthly financial report for July 31st, 2025. There's not much to this report since it's only 1 month of activity, but I'll just touch on some highlights as we scroll through. So the first page, page 1, is the revenues. State funds are preloaded at the beginning of the year, so our state and local revenue is already at 57.9% of the budget. And you will be seeing a presentation on this budget later. Can you read that screen? Okay. So the budget column that you see does not include the 1.7% that we had included in our previous tax warrant. I just made the assumption that I would use the lowest numbers that we could possibly have, and if an adjustment is needed, that will be in the final budget. On the next page, page 2, I just wanted to point out that there, at the bottom of the page, the federal fund and other aid section, there's an ESSER line from last year that had an amount in it. This year, it is completely zeroed out. There's no more ESSER funding left. And then at the very bottom, the reserve has been upped from $3.7 million to $4.1 million, which is roughly 5% of the current expense real estate tax, and that falls in line with board policy. And then looking at the expenditures on the next page, there's only 1 month of activity, so there's nothing really to talk about at this point. If you guys have any questions on any of these numbers, I know I'm kind of breezing through them. Bless you. But feel free to stop me. On page 5, we have the prior year appropriation expenditures, and these are encumbered expenses that have carried over from fiscal year 25 to 26, and we'll just continue to spend these throughout the year based upon what they're encumbered for. And on page 6, we have the cash flow analysis. So we only have 1 month of actual activity, that is July. All the other months are projected, and the projected balance, which you'll see in the budget presentation, is at $8.4 million. So that is less than the benchmark of $8.8 million. But I am optimistic that we'll land closer to 8.8. I was conservative with some of our revenue numbers in the preliminary budget. And as those numbers are finalized in the final budget, I'm hoping things will align with the $8.8 million. Unless there's any questions on that report, that is it.
And did the District Finance Committee already review this?
Yep, sorry, the District Finance Committee did review it and approve it.
Any questions? Okay. Motion to approve the July 31st, 2025 financial report?
So moved.
Mr. Ackerman and Ms. Stock, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, the August 1st financial position report.
So this is the financial position report, and this is a state-required report, which the purpose is to make sure that we have enough local funds on hand as of October 15th to be able to cover our payroll obligations throughout the summer. So the Division 2, 3, cash, those are all pretty much wiped out. As we receive them, we know that we'll spend them all, so we just zero them out, and we focus solely on the local amounts that we have here. So our projected balance is 7.4 million. Our projected 1 month local payroll is 5.1 million, so we are comfortably able to cover our payroll obligations. And this report is something that is taking on a lot more scrutiny as some districts have been in some hot waters recently. So this was also approved by the District Finance Committee.
I do have a question on this one, because in theory, that $5 and $7 million are pretty close together. How is the new ability for tax payments to be staggered throughout the year going to impact this? I feel like it would be easy to be $2 million short and then not be able to make payroll.
The vast majority of our tax revenues are after this report, so they're not even really factored into this report. This is pretty much our local balance from the end of last year, plus the tax revenues that we've already received. They get us to $7.4 million.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion to accept the August 1st financial position report?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Scorbat and Mr. Najemi, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And now the 25-26 preliminary budget.
All right, the 25-26 preliminary budget. I did put together a PowerPoint, which is a very summarized version of the preliminary budget, and you can find the 25-26 detailed version of the preliminary budget on board docs or on the board meeting agenda. So I figured that we should start with looking at last year's results to kind of understand some of the reasonings behind why why I put money in certain operating units or why revenues are expected to be where they land. So this is the 2024-2025 revenue results. We had $7 million over what we budgeted in revenues. A lot of that was due to the state excess of the state funding salaries and other employee compensation benefits. Local excess is due to interest income, which was $667,000 more than the budget. Tax receipts were $300,000 more than budgeted. That's due to delinquent tax payments that come in throughout the year. And pool and facility rental was $108,000 more than budgeted. The reasoning for that, I believe, it's just the budget number was a little lower than where it should have been. Moving on to 24-25 expenditure results, and feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. So we spent $5.8 million less than what we had budgeted. A large portion of that was due to federal, and that is because our federal funds are spent over multiple years. So it was budgeted that we would spend the whole allotment, but really we only spent $5.2 million of our federal funding. Some items of note that we've touched on throughout the previous fiscal year's board reports: student services, student support services, utilities, special education, tuition tax expenditures were all over budget. However, our total expenditures remained under budget. And putting the actual results together, the actual revenues and the actual expenditures, we were in the positive of $10.6 million with a caveat. As of June 30th, 2025, 6.7 million of that 10.6 million was already encumbered, so it was already set aside for purchases that had yet to happen or were in the process of happening. So after all of that, our local fund balance increased by $332,000, a little lower than we anticipated, but it was still positive results in the face of some over expenditures that will now be covered by the second year of our referendum. With that said, we can move on to 25-26 numbers. So these are the projected revenues. I have the 25-26 budget, the 24-25 budget, and the change and the percent change. This is a high-level snapshot. We'll look at some details after this. You can, from the previous slides, recall that we were $7 million over budget in revenues for 24-25. So this $15 million change is not as drastic as it looks when you compare budget to budget. The next slide are some local revenue highlights. The first one is real estate tax. So it shows that we have $7.2 million increase. That is when you look at our projected number versus the budget number. For purposes of our resetting of the tax rate, we had to base it off actual. So when you compare actual to projected, the difference between those two numbers ties directly back to our projected referendum income. Interest income, you can see in the prior year we received $2.8 million, but I've only budgeted for 2.1. I'm trying to be conservative with that because you never know when the interest rates will start going down. Also, we have our delayed tax payments due to some legislation that passed, so we won't be able to incur interest while our balance is the highest. So I kept that lower. It's also, in my mind, better to keep it low because interest rates can always go down, and in the future, you don't want to have a hole when the interest rates start going down. The choice line, I was very conservative with this to start. We'll have a better picture of that when we pass the final budget in December. The nutrition line, so that one, the actual was 5.1 in 24-25, but it was budgeted for 5.9, and I projected at 6.2 because the director of nutrition is doing a great job better utilizing some of the reimbursement rates for both state and federal revenues, and she has new ideas and she's implementing new plans to really increase the revenue. So there was an increase of $1.1 million over the prior year, which I think could be too low, hopefully. Charter, I kept that relatively level, and that's another line item where we'll have a better picture when we have final numbers in December. But the main driver of our local revenues is that referendum. On the next slide, we have some state revenue highlights. The personnel lines and the transportation lines are both driven by the amount of money that we receive to reimburse us to cover salaries. Unique alternatives, I adjusted that downwards just to align with historical revenues. The substitute block grant, that was money that was received for Harlan for substitutes. They did not meet the criteria this year, which the criteria is you have to be at a low income population of 50% or more, and they were at 49.07%. So they did not meet that criteria. Hopefully we can utilize the WLC to help us out with that lack of funding now. Opportunity grant, that has had some larger increases in previous years. I think we're maybe maxed out on that, so that has remained fairly level with where it was in the prior year. Safety and security, that has a small increase. I included that mostly because we'll talk about it more on the expenditure side of things. And the related services number, that's when we cash in related service units. It's used for special education contractors and services. That is a number that we'll also have a better picture of come December.
Mr. McCoy, what's the source of the low income determination, and is there anything to challenge that figure, or?
I don't know the source of it, but I can definitely look into it if we have any leeway to.
Because, yeah, if we're that
Push it.
close and we missed it, I'd be curious as to the accuracy of the numbers.
We did double check with the state, and they confirmed that Harlan was not a recipient.
All right, on the next slide, we done with slides?
Sorry, I'll just.
All right, so this slide has the operating revenues by source. This was something I mimicked from previous preliminary budget presentations, and it shows that we're receiving less and less of our revenues are coming from state slowly. Last year, the state portion was 58%. Now it's at 56.4%. The real estate tax, that's at 39%. Last year was 38%. So it seems like the state is funding us a little bit less and less, and we have to rely on our residents a little more and more. On the next slide, we have the 25-26 budgeted expenditures by source. So this compares the 25-26 budget to the 24-25 budget. Again, it's just a very high-level snapshot with some more details to come on the next page. The federal line shows a decrease on the expenditure side of things, and that is because, like I mentioned before, we don't spend the entire amount of federal funds that we receive in the year, so I pushed it down a little closer to what we actually spend in the year to give us a more realistic picture. On the next slide, we have some of the notable expenditure changes.
Excuse me, Mr. McCoy.
Yep.
I was just wondering why we don't spend the federal money that we get.
Mm-hmm. So it has continuously overlapped years. So the start of this year, we're spending what's left from the prior year, and then it just continues and continues and continues. There are certain restrictions on spending it, so it does sometimes get a little difficult to fit that all into 1 year, so we spread it out over a couple fiscal years.
And Mr. Lavoy, it's an October to October grant, and so it's a late starter as opposed to a fiscal year, and so the overlap just happens year over year. But please, we spend it, we don't give any back, we use it all. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a lot of numbers on this slide. The first two lines are the salary lines. The state line, that expenditure, that's pretty much that is covered with state funds as they help us cover salaries. The local line is a 2.5% increase over the prior year actual, and that's to account for local wage increases. Student support services, that budget line, we've talked about this many times, absorbed a lot of the ESSER costs, and this addition should make up the operating unit whole for 25-26. Operations and utilities, that was due to basically increased energy costs and increased energy usage. And I'm working with the director of facilities to see what plans we can implement to limit the utility usage going forward. Transportation, that has a $432,000 increase. That is mainly salaries that's covered by state funding. Safety and security, that is a fairly large increase. $85,000 of that increase was money that was moved from another budget line into the safety and security budget line. And the referendum, one of the selling points was that a large portion of the money would go to safety and security. So I know there's a lot of things that we need to accomplish. So there was some extra money added to that operating unit. The special education tuition tax line, that was increased to cover overages. It also includes $250,000 from the shift of our tax rates from debt service to tuition tax. And I am hopeful that the RFP that you guys just approved will have a positive impact on some of the costs that we were seeing in the special education tuition tax line. Minor cap improvements, that is all covered by a shift of the tax rates from debt service to minor cap, $250,000 to be exact. We'll cover that. And child nutrition, that is an increase from the prior year budget, but it's a decrease from prior year actual. And that again is because the director of nutrition is doing a great job to find ways to cut costs and evaluate all the key performance indicators of a nutrition program to make sure that their program is where it needs to be financially. So putting that all together on the next slide, it's still broken out in state, local, and federal. The state, at the end of the year, we should have a balance remaining of $500,000, local 1.4 million, and federal 1.5. The local balance from last year that we carried into this year is 6.9, and that gets us to 8.4, which you saw on the cash flow statement from the July financial report. So that is not 8.8, but again, this is a very conservative budget from a revenue standpoint, and the hope is that we'll end up closer to the 8.8 or above the 8.8. And the final budget will come to the board in December with more exact figures. The preliminary budget was approved by the District Finance Committee at our meeting last week.
Any questions for Mr. McCoy?
So was there any discussion at the Finance Committee regarding every year when we look at local revenue, there's kind of an anticipated delinquency rate? Is any discussion that the delinquencies might be increased this year given the assessments and the increases affecting households?
That was not discussed at the Finance Committee meeting.
We don't really have any, I guess, past data to track how this is going to affect things. So, I mean, it seems reasonable. I think we've always been conservative with that number in the anticipated collections. I don't think we always hit that delinquency number, so hopefully there won't be that much of an impact. And to Mr. Heller's earlier point, how any kind of graduated payments will affect. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the preliminary budget for 25-26?
So moved, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman and Mr. Lavoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the moment we've been waiting for, I think, the tax warrant update.
All right. The big ticket item. So since we previously approved our tax rate, there have been some big changes. On our first slide 2, I guess, we're just going to review some of the new legislation that has passed that is the reason for us discussing this topic. House Bill 242 allows Newcastle County school districts to reset their 25-26 tax rate. It allows Newcastle County school districts to split their tax rate between residential and non-residential. The non-residential rate may not be more than 2 times the residential rate, and it also extends the payment deadline to November 30th, 2025. There's also a caveat that districts can borrow from their Division I funds that are provided by the state in the event that they face a cash shortfall. But Newcastle County should be collecting our tax payments along the way, and they should be sending us those tax revenues along the way. And a little over 50% of the real estate tax payments in the county are paid through mortgage companies. So I don't know that those payments will be delayed. So I still think we'll get a large chunk of our tax revenue within the same time frame that we have in previous years. On the next slide, we have some additional bills that passed. House Bill 241 that set in place an installment payment plan for those who experienced a tax increase greater than $300. House Bill 240 requires the county to issue a refund to a taxpayer for an overpayment of $50 or greater. And I do think the taxpayer is going to have to fill out some paperwork in order to get that refund rather than a credit on their next year tax bill. And then Senate Resolution 122 calls for a comprehensive review of Delaware's property tax reassessment to ensure future reassessments are improved. I should also note that the school district, Brandywine School District, as well as the other Newcastle County school districts, really tried to push for an increase on the income thresholds for the senior tax exemption. However, that bill did not make it to the floor to be voted on. We also floated the idea of increasing the senior tax credit from $500 to $1,000, but because the state's budget was already passed, they could not accommodate that request because it would have cost them twice as much money for the senior tax credit. All right, now into the good stuff. The tax rate reset. So the district's original 2025-2026 tax rate included 1.7% of the 10% revenue allowance after a reassessment. The intent was to provide Brandywine with $1.2 million to offset the loss of federal funding. Of course, almost immediately after after the board approved that, the federal government said you can have your federal funds that we were withholding. So with this process, we have the ability to remove that 1.7% increase from our tax rate. And it was my recommendation and the district's finance committee's recommendation that we remove the 1.7% increase from the tax rate during this process. So all of the numbers that you will see going forward have the 1.7% removed. So on the next slide, it has a breakdown of what actually is residential versus non-residential. Residential parcels consist of anything classified as residential or classified as farm. Non-residential is apartments, commercial, industrial, and utilities. Apartments being anything that has 4 or more units. So this aligns with the methodology used by Newcastle County and will align with the methodology used by most, hopefully all of the Newcastle County districts, and Newcastle County themselves strongly suggested that districts follow these guidelines to avoid uniformity issues and to prevent the classifications getting jumbled up in billing processes. All right, on the next slide, just a little blurb about split tax rates. So the split tax rates will allow the district to redistribute tax burdens caused by the Newcastle County reassessment. It will let us shift some of the tax burden that originally fell on residential properties back to non-residential properties. So all residential parcels will see some sort of relief. We have 32,000 residential parcels. The relief will limit, but it will not erase the additional tax burden from the Newcastle County reassessment. Yes.
With regards to that, is it a matter of overall tax burden or Brandywine School District related tax burden that you're discussing in that bullet?
This is all specific to Brandywine School District. So it was also a hot topic about who or what properties were receiving residential declines in taxes, and the properties that received declines previously will have an even larger decline in their taxes if we split the rates. Non-residential parcels will see an increase in taxes. That is 1,300 parcels. Some of the non-residential parcels did experience a tax increase after the original tax rate was set. So after this process, they will see an incremental increase going forward. All right, on the next slide, so we talk a lot about the tax burden, and this slide shows what the tax burden actually is. So the tax burden represents the percent of taxes each property class pays. So if we look at residential, excuse me, before the reassessment, on the right side, the column says that their tax burden was 67.35%. After the reassessment, the residential tax burden was 79.30%. Commercial, before reassessment, was 21. After reassessment was 13%. So those are pretty large percentages, and when you look at the dollar amounts, it's even more staggering. So the total residential burden before the reassessment, when you include residential and farm, was 67.38%. So then we have to figure out what tax rates will put us back at those tax burdens that existed prior to the reassessment. So to do that, we took the receipts, the revenue neutral tax receipts, the $97 million, times the fiscal year 25 tax burden to realize how much in tax revenue the residential class needs to generate. Then we divide the receipts by the total assessment for the class, and we multiply it by 100, and you can figure out your new revenue neutral rate. For residential, it's 0.5233, and for non-residential, it's 0.9687. The next step on the next slide is to figure out what are the split rates to add in our referendum. So we do the same process. We know that we need to generate $6.979 million in revenue. 67% of that needs to come from our residential classification. 32% of that needs to come from our non-residential classification. So we can calculate how much each class needs to generate, figure out the tax rate to generate that amount, and you can see what we need for residential, 0.0376, and for non-residential, 0.0695. Adding those two together on the next slide.
So, Mr. McCoy, just hang on. We're a little bit behind. Yeah. Could you I'm sorry, but we were a little bit behind. So just explain the step one and the step two again.
So step one, we know that our tax revenues in fiscal year 25 were $97.238 million. We know that in fiscal year 25, the tax burden for the residential class was 67.37. So at that tax burden, they generate a tax revenue of $65 million. When you divide the receipts by the total assessment of the class and you multiply it by 100, you can come to the tax rate that's needed to generate that level of revenue for that class. And for residential, it was 0.5233, and for non-residential, it was 0.9687. So the next slide on step two is the same process, but with our referendum revenues. So the 6.9, that's the amount that we projected we would receive from the referendum when we passed the referendum 2 years ago, times the tax burden. So residential properties need to generate $4.7 million of our referendum. And you do the equation again, and that comes out to 0.0376 for residential and 0.0695 for non-residential. And on the next slide, we add the two pieces together to figure out the total rate. So the new residential rate would be 0.5609. The new non-residential rate would be 1.0382. That makes our non-residential rate 1.85 times higher than the residential rate, which is within the legislation cap of 2 times higher. On the next slide, we look at how those new rates play out for our split rate tax burden. So we had the same thing that we had on the previous slide, the before reassessment amounts and the before reassessment tax burdens. And then you have the same thing with the split rates on the right side and the tax burden that the split rates generate. So you can see residential, 67.35. It went to 67.36, but it's because all these large numbers in the decimals, things kind of round oddly. And at the end of the day, the new the new rates generate us $104 million of revenue, and that includes our referendum income. And that agrees to, in the previous presentation, where we had option one, which did not include any of the allowance, which we'll see on the next slide.
So, Mr. McCoy?
Yes.
And just so for this slide, so just to emphasize what I was saying earlier, so in this scenario, right, once we split the rate and if we, assuming we choose to vote to pull back that 1.7%, so the amount of tax revenue being generated now is the exact same amount that would have been generated this year had it not been for reassessment.
Correct. Yep. The difference between the two numbers, the 97 million from last year and the 104 from this year, 6.987 is the referendum. All right, so you can see that the split rates generate $104 million. On the next slide is a screenshot from my previous tax warrant presentation where we had recommendation one, which was the neutral rate plus a referendum, and we do not use any of the allowance. And you can see at the end of the day, that resulted in $104 million, the same amount that we saw on the previous slide from our split rates. Now we have a couple examples on the next slide. So this is an example of how properties with the same assessed value can see vastly different results. The current single rate assessed value, the assessed value that we have for the after reassessment numbers, 385, 922, that is the average household assessed value after the reassessment. So you can see there's a couple examples. The first one, the home assessed value increased by 350%. The one to the right of that, 450%, and then so on and so forth. You can see that the 2025, 2026 one rate compared to the 2025, 2026 with the split rates, every example has the same decrease of $406, regardless of the volume that your taxes went up. So in all cases, the reduction from splitting the rate will be the same. In these examples, the increase that is due to the second year of our referendum is $145. So for example, when you look at the home that went up 650%, their 25, 26 tax rate change, if we split the rates, is $739. $145 of that is because of Brandywine School District. So there's an example on the next page of how residents can figure out what these split rates would save them. So this is a screenshot of the tax bill on the Newcastle County parcel search. If you look up your parcel number, you click on your parcel number and then you click view history of tax bills at the top of the page. You can select the tax bill that has already gone out for 25, 26, and you'll see on there a line for Brandywine School District. If you take that number, the current amount, and you multiply that by 15.79%, it will calculate the decrease in your taxes. So in this example, the decrease is $419.
And that's for residential only, correct?
This is residential only. All right. On the next slide, a lot of the phone calls that I received and even some questions from the Finance Committee, people didn't really understand how any of this can be revenue neutral. So I've tried to show real life examples of how this has been revenue neutral plus the referendum for Brandywine School District. So these are all residential examples. I chose, these are actual values from the Newcastle County tax parcel file that they send us. And you can see the increases go from 120% to 1,343%. So the lower your assessment was before the reassessment, the worse off you likely are after reassessment because you likely increased a percentage over our average. And if you look at line 5, That one increased 394%. That's pretty much our average, between 393 and 394. So if you're over 393.5, you're likely going to see an increase even after we split the rates. So I just wanted to compare line 1 to line 10. In line 1 and line 10, after the assessment, they both have very similar values. However, they're both seeing very different results because of the reassessment. In line 1, because they only increased 120%, they are benefiting from the reassessment. So their taxes actually went down $1,600. In line 10, since their assessed value jumped up dramatically, they are paying more in taxes. And if you look at the split rate tax column, the second from the right, they're actually paying a very similar amount. So the previously lower assessed home is just now catching up to what the previously higher assessed home was paying. So I kept those all on this slide because they had similar new assessed values. On the next slide, I went with the higher end assessed values, and you can see it's the same story playing over again. So from the first slide, the previous slide to this slide, those 20 examples, the net change overall in taxes paid to Brandywine is $52. So you can see people, some homes are paying $3,600 less, some homes are paying $2,300 more. It all nets together, and at the end of the day, Brandywine School District's rate is revenue neutral plus our referendum.
Mr. McQueen, I just want to say thank you because the two slides that you have, tax burden shifts, show what a realtor told me. And the realtor told me that Tyler Technologies overvalued the lower end homes and undervalued the higher end homes. And your two slides point that out quite clearly. So I applaud the Senate for passing a resolution to look into this process because it's fundamentally flawed. I'm hoping that there's some way to fix it moving forward. I'm glad that we're doing the things that we're doing. I support the recommendation, but Tyler Technologies did a really bad job with this assessment, in my opinion.
Thanks. So on the next slide, we also need to consider the non-residential impact of splitting our tax rate. The non-residential statistics with a rate of 1.0382 are as follows. There's 394 parcels that will have a tax decrease, still have a tax decrease from their 24-25 tax burden, tax bill. The average decrease is $13,821. Tax decreases range from less than $1 to as much as $453,000. So even after we split our tax rates, there are parcels in the non-residential category that will still see high six-figure decreases in their taxes. There will be 934 parcels that will have a tax increase from 24-25. The average increase is $11,000. The increases range from less than $8 to as much as $611,000. The average assessed value of the top 50 increases is $23 million. So a lot of the larger increases that we're seeing are on the larger valued properties. And I tried to highlight that on the next slide, where I split out the commercial and the apartment parcels. I grouped them by assessed values to show what the average increase is for that level of assessed value. So the District Finance Committee was split on how they wanted to, bad wording, split the tax rates. And I think that was because I did not provide them with enough data on commercial and apartment parcels. So I wanted to put this out here so you guys can see what the actual impact is to the different levels of businesses and apartments. So for the apartments, those valued at $20 million or more, they have an average tax change of $137,000. So their taxes will increase $137,000. Of the top 5, 3 of them are currently under appeal. So they're trying to reduce their assessed value. I think the point of this was to show that it's not ideal to put taxes back on anyone, but it is likely the larger properties that are seeing the tax increase. So we would hope that those are the properties that can more easily take on the tax increase. Of course, there's going to be outliers within the groups, but as a whole, I think this slide does a good job of conveying the impact to the different levels of commercial parcels and apartment parcels.
Mr. McCoy, you mentioned that some of the top 5 3 of them are under appeal. Is that because they got the appeal in before the deadline?
Yes.
Can you comment at all about residents now who, what right they have to appeal their appraisal?
I don't think that they would be able to appeal for this tax bill. I believe that window has closed, and I don't know that they're opening it back up, but they can appeal for next year's taxes at any time. There is a deadline. I take that back. Not at any time. There's a deadline. I think it might be April.
Thank you.
Yep. So on the next slide, we have another option for splitting the rates. Now, just because I presented the 1.85 times option doesn't mean that's our only option. Newcastle County split their tax rate at 1.5 times. That would be an option for us, or any split in between, below 1.5, above 1.5. But if we were to limit the non-residential rate to 1.5 times the residential rate, our new rates would be as you see here. So residential would be 0.5964 and non-residential 0.8944. That would mean that the tax burden would slightly shift back to residential, and it would now be 71.81%, whereas it was 67%. The decrease.
Oh, sorry. So is the 1.5 kind of arbitrary? I mean, in your last example, I liked how you're following the percentage of what it was prior to the reassessment. So is there any methodology between 1.5 or any other number?
I don't know how Newcastle County landed on the 1.5. From what I've heard, they did the calculation to see where they needed to be to shift the burden back, and it landed on 1.5, so they drew up the ordinance to be 1.5.
Okay. I appreciate the work that you did on the prior slide to keep it consistent with prior years in that shift. Thank you.
So if we did 1.5, the decrease to residential bills would be approximately 10.51%, as opposed to the 15.79 that we saw in earlier slides, and the increase to non-residential bills would be approximately 34%. All right, on the last slide here, just some final thoughts. The District Finance Committee is in support of removing the 1.7% of additional tax that was included in our original 2025-2026 tax warrant. The District Finance Committee could not reach a consensus on what level to split the tax rates, 1.85 versus 1.5. And again, I believe some of that was due to the fact that I presented more data here than was presented to them at the time. And one of their big hesitations was they did not have the data to make a decision.
So could I jump in there, sir? Even if they didn't reach a consensus on how to split it, was there a consensus on that it should be split?
Yes.
Thank you.
Surrounding Newcastle County districts are heading towards splitting the tax rates in a way to return the burden to levels pre-reassessment. So that would be the 1.85 for us. And it's my recommendation that Brandywine School District split the rates at 1.85 times to return the tax burdens to prior levels and provide relief to 32,000 residential parcels and remain uniform with the surrounding districts. And that is it. Any questions?
I'd love to hear everybody's questions. I'll share my opinion. I think, like I said earlier, that there's not a perfect answer, right? So whatever we do is going to impact somebody negatively. And my fear, I guess, is as a former small business owner who depended on that to survive, the chance that some of this impact is going to, really hurt small businesses in the community as a concern. But at the same time, I think our overall obligation is to do the most good for the most amount of people. And I believe the 1.8 split makes sense in that case. I'd love to hear everybody else's.
I guess that would be my question, is what impact, do we know an impact on small businesses, or what constitutes a small business, or?
That's kind of why I tried to break it out by assessed value, thinking that the small businesses might be in the lower assessed ranges. And those increases weren't, they weren't awful, but I'm not that small business. So I guess any increase is awful. But I also looked at some of the larger valued non-residential parcels. And when I looked them up on the parcel search, they were a strip mall on Marsh Road that had about 6 properties, and their taxes went up $10,000. So it would be $10,000 split amongst all of the businesses in that little stretch. So I'm sure there are some businesses out there that had they were kind of sliding by with a low assessed value. This brought that to light, jumped their assessed value up, so their percentage is higher than the rest of the group, so they might take a hit, but it's hard to say.
And the numbers on the residential versus the non-residential or commercial, it was about 1,300 parcels?
Yes.
Were the non-residential?
Non-residential, yes.
Kind of going back and thinking about that as well, if small businesses, trying to justify this in some way, are reliant on the members of our communities to support their business, either the higher tax burden on the residential, they don't have the money to spend at small businesses, versus, which I'll say, given the outcome of the reassessments, I think it's hard to argue with shifting it back to the pre-assessment balance. And I kind of, along with Mr. Haller, I think the greater good is to split it along those lines that it was prior, and kind of, I think that's the best way to justify it.
Have we had any payments of tax obligations from the prior tax establishment? Has anybody paid that?
Yes.
So how many of them are going to have to get paid back, and how quickly are we going to have to calculate that?
That would all be done by Newcastle County. So they collect our payments, and they're also going to send out new bills that have an adjusted amount, and they are going to have to reconcile how much people have already paid versus what their new bill is.
And lastly, do we, based on the law and the presentation, for the ability to delay into 3 separate payments, anything over $300, is that for residential, or is that for any entity paying taxes?
The bill says residential specifically.
Okay.
And then, Ms. McCoy, I just want to clarify that, sorry, I just want to clarify, because I know that last month, when we talked about potentially splitting the tax rate, I know that the recommendation was to not do that because of the danger of basically corporations basically suing. Is that right? So I just want to clarify, do we still have that danger of the school district getting sued, or is this now because of the special session that we don't have that danger?
Can I jump? My understanding, right, is that the reason we couldn't do it last time is because it was illegal.
Right. Or that it could be
it's
potentially illegal.
Yep.
And now,
There's still always the chance that someone could sue us.
got it.
Or the county. They would likely not come specifically after us because we did not change the rules to split the rate.
Clarification, and by removing the 1.7% for lack of federal funds that we hadn't anticipated, Are we the only district in Newcastle County that has not used any part of that 10% buffer?
Red Clay is likely to remove their 1%, so they would also be revenue neutral.
Okay,
And I think that's it.
thank you.
We're the first district to meet since the special session.
Say again?
We're the first district in Newcastle County to have a meeting since the special session. So we're setting the tone
I
here.
got you.
Are we ready for a motion?
Sure.
So I guess in thinking about making a motion from a logistical standpoint, do we need to address the federal funds piece separately from the split rate? Or?
I think that we should vote to remove the federal fund.
Isn't that part of the recommendation, Mr. Scova?
What's that?
We're voting to accept the recommendation. I believe that was part of the recommendation.
So the recommendation is together, the 1.7 removal of federal funds plus the split rate at 185. It's not two recommendations, it's one recommendation.
It could be one.
I'll make a motion to remove the 1.7 increase of the federal, due to the federal funds. The 1.7 increase.
As a separate item?
But you're splitting it now, Mr. Scarborough.
Yeah, so the motion is
I think it's cleaner to do it.
to remove the 1.7% increase that we took on the initial tax warrant. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Is there a motion for the second part of the recommendation?
So moved.
So that is a motion to split the rate at
1.85.
1.85
Between
Mr. Ackerman?
residential.
between residential and non-residential.
Yes.
Second.
Is there a second? All right, Mr. Scrobot, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. McCoy. With that general information, we are going to try over the next couple of meetings to move meetings around the community. So our next regular board meeting will be September 15th at PS DuPont. I should have mentioned there'll be a workshop September 4th here at Mount Pleasant Elementary. The next regular board meeting will be September 15th at PS DuPont. And then there's tentatively a workshop for October 6th back at Mount Pleasant Elementary.
Will that be in the auditorium or the library at PS?
Auditorium? Auditorium at PS.
Thank you.
Any other items? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, and we are adjourned at 8:50.